Yeah,
Okay.
I think COVID actually ended up like that
It's
whole
probably,
year
yeah,
ended up
a
being
macro event for a lot of people.
yeah, yeah.
Well, it seems like the current world conditions have put a lot of people into like an accelerated rate of learning for whatever they're specifically trying to do, right, in their life, or whatever was a problem that they were able to ignore is no longer an ignorable problem, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think that's definitely true.
Maybe that was from the disruption to like their daily routine.
Well, of course, right? People have had more time to themselves, which generally leads one to introspection.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But now on top of introspection, we have the cherry on top, which is mass internet access.
Well, right, which is the this is the twist to all this, right? Normally, alone time means actual alone
Right.
time and being
Actually having to fully, isolate from other people.
Mhm.
well. Back in the day, people had a lot of alone time in the fields, working on like whatever they were doing. It took a long time, so they had a lot of time to think, right? And which is why people were so well. People knew the value of working together, right? They understood how important other people were for their continued survival, right? So continuing, continuing along that vein.
I guess like some of the drawbacks of like being in the vicinity of like potentially millions of other people is that you just have the opportunity to kind of build those relationships and become so increasingly scarce that it's not impossible.
Well, right, and that's the development of like parasocial relationships these days, right? Like people are so desperate for anything, they'll form even the bond of like thinking that the person on the other side of a like a YouTube video actually cares about them, right? Or maybe they actually do. I'm not trying to be too cynical about that, but the reality is it's a one-sided sort of relationship, right? And that's why they call it a parasocial relationship.
Well, they care. The thing is, it's just fractured because they care about those people, but they care about certain parts of those people. Whereas like me their real life friends, if they still have any, are care about like a different part of that person, and then their family cares about a different part of that person, like their mother and father, their siblings. Like, so in terms of the internet is a place where you can go and have some of your, like, you know, deepest fears or whatever. You can share those with other people on the internet because of like the anonymity of it. Or you can go to maybe an influencer who discusses that stuff regularly and like interact with that community, or just like watch a video and then like look at the comments or something like that. And that's why, that's like, I guess, the strength you could say of like some like those internet relationships, is that you're still relatively anonymous, so you can talk about like some stuff that you can talk about that you can't necessarily talk to your parents about, or if you did, they wouldn't give a shit, or your siblings, right? Like, depending on how close you are with your siblings, they wouldn't really want to discuss some of the things that you would be discussing with, or at least hearing discussed on the internet.
Sure, sure. Well, I mean, obviously, also if you're desperate enough to like go to the internet for advice or like talk about things, it means things are really bad in your current situation, more or less, right? Everybody, a lot of people know this these days, but some people don't, right? Like there are like 10 and 9-year olds that don't have access to full-time internet capabilities, right? Like there are new people that come in every day.
Hmm.
The point that I'm trying to make though is well, like kind of back to like the working together concept, right? People are to tie in the people have become so far removed from how exactly another person, because we're so hyper specialized, right? We were just specialized before. Now we're hyper specialized, right? Like, so a lot of the coolest things that are happening on the planet right now, only if like a handful of people really understand, what is really going on. The point I'm trying to make there is, we're disconnected from each other, and the internet is like, it's a tool that has exploded so much since its inception because it is so useful to us, right? But once again, it's getting back to this like baseline programming of we're mishandling it, right? Like we don't fully understand our own capabilities. We don't fully understand. Not every human on this planet is capable of making like all of the. How do I say this?
Can I interject?
Sure.
I think you made a great point about like basically, systems of commerce becoming so complex that it's hard to understand at the individual level. And it relates to like logistics, because people had to confront like how the system really moves with all the supply chain bottlenecks and shortages and stuff, right? Like people, like I know, for example, let's use the example of toilet paper, right? Toilet paper, it might, just a random Walmart, they place an order for toilet paper months ahead of when it comes to the store. But from the consumer level, they just think, oh, they're just out of toilet paper. Like, there'll be more tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like at the individual level, the uneducated things are like so commerce and logistics have become so complex and globalized and stuff. But at the individual level, you basically have to teach people how it actually works. It's not like Bobby Joe made the toilet paper in 2 towns over and it came straight to the store. No, it really came from some Asian country on a boat for 2 or 3 months first, and then on a truck or on a train into the store, into the back room, then to the actual, where it's at on the floor, like in the store.
I think the word you were looking for, Ben, was like faculties. And, it's faculties of like shaping your environment, the faculties of, commingling and actually like kind of integrating brains in a way and just like becoming like more like the one people kind of aspect.
Whereas
the faculties of like nurturing your young and like making them into decent people, like it's the human experience oriented stuff.
Right.
Like,
selfishness has always been there, but we're losing the part where like the person, our next door neighbor, how many people really know their next door neighbors anymore, right?
Yeah.
We've lost the connection that like the person next to you may not directly like influence your life, but you should probably be nice to them, because in larger society, if we aren't nice to each other, then like things break down, right?
But like you said, like originally people would have just been bartering or trading things straight up. And like in that scenario, it's obvious to know, hey, this other person is important for me as well.
But we are biologically limited, right? Like we have to be realistic about being human, as you say, right? We have a baseline program. We have DNA. We have like environmental triggers and factors, right? There's all sorts of things that go into us, right? We can talk about these theories and concepts because of the hard work that other people, like the sacrifice of generations and generations before us, is what allows us to, be having these discussions today.
It's another way to put it, I think, is with technology and communication breaking physical barriers, we have scaled up association. I saw this research that said the reason that a lot of like cities and stuff are hard to govern is because like the human brain only has the capacity to maintain like 180 like relationships with like 180 people. Like once you get past that point, it becomes like very complex. To think about how people have like thousands of Facebook friends, or thousands of Instagram followers or thousands of YouTube followers. The scalability of communities has basically surpassed like what our subconscious brain comprehend.
Absolutely, right. Once again, we're biological creatures. We have limitations, and we're working on like removing those limitations with technology, right? So maybe someday that won't be a problem, but for now, yeah, it's kind of an issue, right? And maybe sometimes we jump ahead a little too far. We're very intuitive creatures, and sometimes we know the answers before we understand the questions, and that can be we're learning through like artificial intelligence, like learning algorithms, that there is a big difference between like understanding the question and finding an answer and finding an answer, right, without understanding the question.
It's like going through puberty. It's like you're in the process of growing up, but you're not grown up yet.
Well, something along those lines. But it's also like it's also like knowing the correct way in the forest when you have no idea why you know the correct way.
Yeah, I mean, see, this goes back to like the whole sapiosexual thing, or like why Nikola Tesla didn't have kids, or like was a virgin or
Well,
whatever.
I think he was an asshole for not giving the world brilliant babies, right? Like he could have just gone and porked a bunch of women and then went back to inventing and whatever, right? But instead he was selfish with his seed, and here we are, right?
Well, I mean, because it goes back to because like like how much things do people really need, I think is the thing. Because a lot of these things, like a lot of things, like you said, I think something you said earlier was like a lot of things on the planet people don't like understand like what's going on, or like people can't, like they don't have like the faculties to like understand like how to use whatever we have and all this shit. But like a lot of people just, they simply aren't like, they don't really want to know, or like care to know, like what they don't want to govern people, like in a big city. Like they don't really want to know about like a supply chain, or like they don't want to know about the technology, like where the toilet paper comes from, or like what, like how people are getting to Mars or some shit. Like a lot of people, or even back in Tesla day, how electricity worked. A lot of people they didn't care about that stuff. Not to say that it's not valuable, but it's just not every, like different things are valuable to different people. I mean, it's like how so many people aren't working right now. I think a part of it is there's nothing that they really want to work on. Like, but if your family had a farm, you would work on the farm to eat. Like, but now people have food, so it's like, what are you, like? Do they want to like learn about their plumbing system? Like, you know what I
I
mean?
see where you're coming from, but the thing is that there's a danger of having an out of sight, out of mind
That's true.
state. You know
That's
what I
true.
mean? Because if it unravels, then you have no other frame of reference.
That's true.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
true.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to be aware of these things at large, so you can adapt accordingly.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, I'm trying to be the voice for those people. I mean, I definitely agree with you guys, but
Those people are going to get, they're like, oh, I don't care about all the complex this and that. They're also going to be the first people itching when they're just complacent. That just sounds like, I understand people want to be to a degree somewhat complacent because we live like more sedentary lifestyles and stuff now, but like it's almost like it's like civic responsibility, right? Like they said, you can't have a democracy with a bunch of dumb people who don't care to have some level of like broader understanding and involvement.
Right. You know what is funny is like the forefathers were only asking for like well, individual responsibility, but now people, I mean, we're headed towards individual sovereignty, right? Like at the rate that we're going as a species, there will probably be a point where there aren't more countries anymore. Everybody is like their own person, and they have their own sort of like rules for how you interact with them, right? And people will just choose a very like limited number of people to interact with, more or less, right?
Well, because like that to
And the
me,
rest will be online, and the rest, like everything else, will just be done via technology somehow.
well, I mean, to me, that's always been. I think it's always been like that. Like whatever technology's on the planet, like there were always people who left and went and either like they maybe committed suicide or like they left and lived somewhere else or they did whatever. Like I don't I
Yeah.
mean we might have different technology today, but I don't think those dynamics necessarily change.
Yeah, I
Like
think you're
what
right. I think individual people just do that on their own. That's what off-grading and homesteading is. Just making that individual choice to just do that.
But what is the incentive structure there? Like, explain to me what is the point of that ultimately?
A hedge against everything else falling apart. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, okay,
Now,
and also to get back like to one thing that you said, UA man, like you can't have you can't have everybody being an individual and like not like I don't think that's or I mean everybody is an individual, but for everyone to like only be able to move as like an agent of themselves, like without any relation, without any connection to other things unless they build that, unless they want it to be there. I don't really think that's possible. Because even in today's age, you have a lot of people who are quote unquote like they're not like they're alone for most of the day, like only kind of with their own selves maybe, like for most of the day. But even in that, you still have let me just say even in that you have if a government prints money, you're still affected by that. Like your purchasing power still follows by the day. Like you don't have any say in that. Like you're connected to that no matter what. Like you know what I mean? You can't get away from certain things.
I mean, you could literally